We're going to talk about, the back office systems. Like, where are you? What are some of the things that are out there? What are the challenges that are facing small businesses? The at-work systems solution. We're going to talk to Ron, who's the founder and CEO, and we'll ask him. Talk about why he came up with this. What was he seeing out there, and why did he found this company to develop these key tools? Shirley Bailey is the founder and CEO of MSC Management Services LLC, and she's helping companies find these solutions and work with them to implement these solutions. And Mark Evans is the president of Bubo Learning Design, and he's using these systems, and he's got the same challenges a lot of other companies have, and he's going to talk about his experiences and the thought processes and really where he is. He's pretty early still, so you're going to provide some learning on the go. He might be learning right now. Anyhow,
always learning.
Always learning. With that, again, if there's any questions, plug away. We'll cover those, and we're going to try to keep on time here. We're going to be going till what would we say, 3 o'clock today, right? Or 2:30, right?
Yeah. To be perfectly honest, you guys aren't really on a time crunch. Right. So if we have a conversation going and we have a dialogue, unless you guys got to go, feel free. Let's have at it.
Right. So Vic, Ron, why don't you go ahead and talk about some of your the thoughts you had in the challenges and where at work came from, and kind of this back office system conundrum that a lot of small businesses might have.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Robert, for the intro. I have been working with small businesses probably for the better part of a couple of decades. I was with a large prime contractor, and in the role that I was in, I had to work with a lot of small businesses. And one of the things that I recognized is a lot of them didn't have sort of the adequate infrastructure to be able to work with us as the prime and then meet a lot of the requirements that we were putting on them. Sometimes when you look at it, it's kind of hard to be a government contractor, especially when you're small, because you have special accounting requirements that you have to meet. You have requirements in terms of security that you have to meet. And so what I found in working with small businesses is they would typically have sort of a patchwork of solutions to be able to address some of those. And sometimes putting that patchwork of solutions together in the long run was probably more costly than having sort of an integrated efficient approach. And so what I wanted to do with the One Lake system is really build out a platform that was integrated, that would allow them to be able to address both the things they needed to deliver today, but also the things that they needed to be able to scale and grow their business. But what was really important to me is be able to deliver this platform in a way that it could be, affordable to a small business. And I think that's really what we strive for every day in terms of delivering, our solution and how we've tried to solve, this problem.
Yeah. Shirley, where do you fit into this, into the at-work system?
Well, I've been working with Ron for a couple of years, and coming from a government contracting background, a government contract auditor, I too was working with a lot of small businesses and understood the challenges that they were having, understanding how most business owners are not accountants. They don't understand government contracting. They don't understand indirect rates. So trying to work with Ron to develop a system as he was going forward to try to present to these business owners and others that didn't have accounting background, how cost effectively and a streamlined type of process could work to help them and to help them understand as they grew, and to be able to understand how, the audit requirements and those types of items that were behind that. So working with using my background in government contract accounting to help the small businesses understand how a system like this is crucial for them as they grow as well.
Right. I know a few years ago, I was working with a small business who was applying for their phase 2 SBIR. And there may have been some other things going on. I think this is when there was I think a hiring freeze. There was some stimulus packages going on. This is maybe about 10 years ago, and companies were not being given their phase twos because they hadn't proved that they had a timekeeping system, an approved cost accounting system in place that they've been using. Not that, oh, now I've got one, give me the money. They said, well, have you been using it? And, well, use it in 3 months, come back again. And it was sort of like, oh, really? So again, that's always been in my mind for the last decade of like, wow, you really gotta, and the dynamics in the government change, like the perceptions of government contracting officers, ebbs and flows, and all of a sudden they had billions of more dollars to manage, and guess what they weren't doing? They weren't hiring more contracting officers at the government level. These contracting officers were slammed. So again, these are ways to try to, all these things are ways to make it easier for them to let them give you the money or award you. And it's not a reason not to. So, so Mark, you're using this stuff now, right? So, or you're engaging in with it, and you're
Yes.
starting. And so tell us about some of the sort of the thought processes you had in
Sure. I think
both your SBIR side of things as well as your general business.
yeah, Ron did a good job of describing us as the typical example. We were founded in 2015, so relatively young, still learning our way, and had been growing through private sector growth and targeted the public sector because we realized we were located and living in a hub zone. And so we went that route and put together all the different systems that we had at our disposal. So we had Clockify for tracking hours, using Insperity for our payroll, using QuickBooks for just basic accounting, just the bare minimum, using Slack and Asana for project management, just having to make those software decisions one by one as we incurred an issue that needed a software solution, right? So we were very much patchwork of many different tools. And so that was one operational issue. At the same time, we discovered the SBIR market and applied for one with the Air Force, and were lucky enough to be awarded a phase 1 through AppWorks, which really got the ball rolling for us needing more clarity on our accounting system, specifically because of the fringe rates and the different level of detail that the government requires. So that really became a catalyst for me to say, okay, enough is enough of this patchwork. How can we consolidate and have a solution and a plan in place so that we can scale? Because doing it that way isn't something that I would advise anybody to try to scale with, because all of those software packages come with their own subscription fees and user licenses and updates, and it does become quite cumbersome, even if you're not adding all the costs together at once. When you do look at the holistic number, it's pretty expensive to approach your operations with a patchwork of software solutions. So that's what, when Victor Roeder reached out and we started the conversations with OneLink, and we were in the middle of our phase 2 application, and it became very clear to me how helpful this would be for that effort and all future efforts. Because as you outlined, Ron, the SBIR program is certainly an attractive place for businesses to try to hang their hats and get a little bit of traction with new ideas or innovations. And that's certainly something that we intend to continue to do, and we need to do it better. So our phase 2 was selectable but not funded. So we're back to the drawing board. We're about to apply for one with the USDA. They released their RFA about 2 weeks ago, and we're back at it for another SBIR. The Air Force one, we were lucky enough to turn into a phase 3, which is just non-SBIR funding, as you outlined. But the relationships we got from the SBIR phase 1 were really key to that. And I'm sitting at Dyess Air Force Base today as we're finishing up that work. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. And again, I think
Robert, can I add
Yeah.
can I add a few things to
certainly.
that? So I think we met Mark, kind of, in his early, stages as a company, and especially as a government contractor. And in addition to, kind of the solutions and being able to build sort of an efficient, back office. The other thing that I think companies kind of at his stage need to, be aware of is long-term, if they really are going to be successful as a government contractor, there's just some things that they have to do on their corporate resume around understanding what the rules are for accounting and understanding things that like the indirect rates and understanding what the government is looking for in terms of when they start to do the audit and they want to know, okay, how have you spent this money? How have you been, can you tell us exactly what, you've spent it on and provide that kind of accountability? And so from my perspective, it isn't a matter of just getting to a better place cost and getting to, having a more efficient system, although that is a key driver. There is also, how do I understand how to really be a government contractor? And an important part of that is understanding enough about the accounting so that when you're proposing, on your level 2, it's making sense of what you're proposing. And certainly when you're bidding on, jobs outside of the SBIR program, that becomes an important factor as well.
Yeah, I think I'll echo that. Our intent is to scale, right? We want to grow, make small, big, and so like we're putting together a contract now for the Bureau of Land Management, which because of the kind of the hard lessons that we had to learn going from minimally using QuickBooks to having a very robust accounting system with codes and rates to the level of detail the government expects, we're far more prepared to put that proposal together for the contract, and it's outside of the SBIR world. So it's already giving us, I think, the benefit of trying to act like a true government contractor for the opportunity that's right in front of us right now.
Cheryl, do you have any other comments on the overall need for these sorts of, your experiences? And then Ron, we can go back to you before we go to the next panel. May ask you a little bit more about, the modularity. These are modules, the cost effectiveness. I mean, we all know Deltek, these giant, bigger systems that are out there that the average small company that's, where is this making sense for the sweet spot for companies to look into these sort of solutions? Because I know
Robert, I love to talk about the product, so
yeah.
I'll let Shirley weigh in first, and then
I know we're going to talk in the second panel about some of the training classes, which sort of relate to some of the modules, I think, right? And so maybe that'll be a good transition. You let me know.
I agree. I think with what Mark and Ron both said, it's the understanding of behind where your company really is at. What's behind the cost? How will a proposal impact your cost? How will it impact your rates? And understanding that as being a government contract auditor, it was very obvious when you would go into a company that understood what their indirect rates were or what made up their indirect rates, and those who didn't. And it also is critical when you're doing a proposal of being able to understand, when I win this proposal, the worst thing to do is to say, great, I won this proposal. And then the bad thing is I won this proposal. So it's, it's that type of scenario of understanding, going in with your eyes wide open about what you're about to enter into, and to know that when you put those rates in, it's something that you can live with going forward. So
I think to piggyback a little bit on that, as far as just a business development tool for me personally, having confidence is incredibly important. Instead of being the desperate company just would sign a shoe to get a contract, and that shows, and not having all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, because you do have to know your fringe rates. You really do. Having confidence in those numbers lowers the desperation, I think, that I had in trying to just win anything I could get. and lifted the confidence level to the point where those, I think we just presented ourselves better overall, and it's subtle, but made ourselves more attractive to potential clients.
Yeah, and as I always say, the rates are what they are. And they change.
They change.
As your business grows and you get a contract and you hire employees and you get more money you're expending on, on this contract, and you got more fringe benefits you're providing, and your rates do change. Some of the government agencies at the earliest stages, I know the NIH, for example, gives you, a flat indirect rate unless you want to get one negotiated, and that's a whole process of negotiating rates, right? And I know Ron's kind of like, yeah, that's in this process.
I had an
help you understand the rates.
Robert, I had an interesting experience probably about 2 months ago. I talked to a lot of small businesses, and just by the nature of what we do, we kind of get to know, a little bit more about their business. And so it was a company that they were providing some research, in development, and it was interesting, stuff. But the way they had to attract the engineers and attract the talent that they did, they had put together a very non-government kind of benefit package. And so when we started to look at, the benefit package they had, and they didn't really understand the relationship between that and what it was going to do to their rates. And then we I kind of helped them understand, what the relationship is between the two. I think they realized that it was going to be very difficult for them to be a government contractor and offer those kinds of benefits, and be able to win work. And I think they were well intended. They had good engineers and good research, but it just wasn't sized for the market that they wanted to be in. And so I think sometimes when you start to work with people, you start to give them the tools and you start to give them the real data. I mean, it became obvious to them very quickly that they needed to do something different, especially with their fringe package, right?
Hey guys, before you move on, I want to say a little thing because these guys aren't as great about bragging about themselves, so I'm going to do it. The correlation of this panel might seem a little bit unique, but everybody on this panel is actually, members or strategic partners of the HUBZone Council. And Shirley is the board chair, and she was actually roped into this whole discussion with AtWorks a while back because AtWorks contacted me, who I should never touch any accounting system. Like, they're like, hands off, Michelle, no. And they said, hey, we want to explain this to you. We think that this can help HUBZone companies. We really want to figure out how we can, develop new tools and streamline it because, the compliance process for HUBZone, it's very cumbersome. We have to verify 35%. And I said, I am the wrong one. So I said, well, why don't you talk to our board chair, Shirley, because she is an accounting background. She's working in GovCon for years. And not only did she have a discussion with them, she adopted the system internally. So that speaks volumes to it because I can assure you, somebody that knows her very, very well, she is not going to utilize the system if she herself doesn't believe in it. And, I just wanted to make sure that that was articulated in this conversation, is that these are fellow small businesses that do understand your obstacles, but they also are practicing what they preach. And they realize that there's hiccups. And throughout this entire time, I could hear Shirley, hey, Ron, Victor, maybe it should do this. And so rather than defending why their solution did that, they adjusted in order to meet their clients' needs. So, and obviously, and Mark here, I mean, whoever watched the pitch video already knows he's the bomb diggity. So they're coming up with amazing solutions, and Robert Brooks, obviously is providing amazing tools and resources for the SBIR program. And I'm still going to make sure that he comes back on and has a more discussion. But I just wanted to make that point because I don't feel like it was really coming through when it was explaining why these type of solutions and why you need them. but also, you know, resonating who this panel truly is. So I'll be quiet now. Sorry, guys.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks for
No,
that,
no.
Michelle.
Michelle, you can compliment me all the time if you want to come back on.
And, you know, again, the reason I like these panels that have a small business, you know, multiple small businesses on here, is because it shows, it's you know, other people that are going through your, you know, it's like you're listening to a presentation and like, you know, and then you really learn more about the questions people ask the panelists, right? So because we always, you know, but these are the small businesses that are kind of like everybody that's looking at this presentation now, is that they're going through some of the similar things, but they're creating tools. It's not like, you know, Deltec has not been a small business for, I don't know, probably 2 decades, right? So there's not a recent understanding, or they themselves are not the small business anymore. And these guys are, you know, this is why this is a nice panel, because everybody's sort of, we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, and we all have the same issues and are now I'm with a nonprofit, so a little different. And I have an entire accounting team on the other floor, so thank goodness. But you know, we have these rates, and whenever I do something else, they're different rates, and it challenges the people that are managing contracts to the end. They're like, well, we have, you know, our rates went down, or so now we have more money to spend, you know, or the rates went up. We have to kind of figure out how to tighten this project scope a little bit before the project's over. And it's like, oh, it's changed. So it's dynamic, it's continuing, and making sure that you're, so that's why I like this panel, because it's really relevant. The people on here are relevant currently. So that said, are there any other last comments anybody want to make before we move to the second panel?
Well, yeah, I have a,
Sure.
you know, I have to give a shout out to Shirley as well, because, you know, we have been involved in, you know, working to build the tool, and she's had a real significant role, I think, in what it is today. I remember, I don't know, a while back, we were having a conversation about pricing. And, you know, I sort of had this elaborate scheme, you know, about how I was going to price it. And she goes, no, you know, it's got to be simple. It's got to be affordable for a small business. And it's got to be predictable in terms of what their cost is going to be. And so either, you know, knowingly or unknowingly, I think she doesn't realize how much that conversation that she had with me influenced how we ultimately came up with a very, very flexible and affordable pricing strategy for the product, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I have a really big news for you. The NDAA has passed, the sole sourcing threshold has officially increased, and price evaluation preference is going to be applied at the task order. So, woo woo. Sorry, I'll send out a blast, but thought I'd tell you guys before I do.
Breaking news.
Good.